So this is probably not going to be a detailed review. This is going to be more like an in-field review, maybe a philosophical discussion on my usage of these poles here for the past, maybe 4 or 5 hikes that I've done, and a backpacking trip as well. So let's see, I got these for 30 bucks at Costco, and for $30, hey, what the hell, go for it. Give it a shot. So I've always known about the benefits and the advantages of using trekking poles from some of my buddies who swear by them, and this is going to be the first real spring and summer season for me using them, and I've already had them out on about 4 or 5 treks so far, so I've really gotten comfortable with them, and I've got my technique really down pat, and I want to walk you through some of the technical specs on them here. So what you're looking at here is a telescoping carbon fiber flip lock, highly adjustable trekking pole, and these have been okay for me. First and foremost is to set up your height properly. So when you adjust your pole, you want to set your foot down and have it level across, and you want your elbow to be about a 90 degree bend on your elbow, and that's about the optimal length. Okay, now of course opinions will vary, but that's just what I found. So these flip locks here, they're not like mountain bike seat post clamps, like your Salsa or whatever seat post clamps. You don't need to crank down on them really hard. Just flip them closed, and that's good enough. So it's a plastic assembly with some like zinc plated steel in there, so it's fairly delicate. I wouldn't say it's frail or fragile, but it is plastic, and anything plastic, if you're not careful, you can crack. Particularly the little knurled threaded nut here at both ends. If you're not careful, you could probably over tighten down on that. Now there is a brass insert that's in there though. Okay, so you don't need to crank down on it too tight. Just crank down on it tight enough to support your weight. And for me, given about 200 pounds and how strongly I use them, that's been okay. These have been okay for me. So these are combination cork and synthetic foam grip ended, and frankly I haven't really found a real benefit one or the other. My hands don't really perspire all that much, so I'm perfectly a-okay, with these just the way they are. Okay, so the proper grip technique is to loop your wrist under, come up through the bottom and under through the wrist strap, and then place the heel of your hand like this and put your thumb down here. So what this does is it allows you a firm grip, a firm mount onto the pole without gripping. Okay, so in fact I find that I hardly ever find myself needing to grip these very firmly when I'm using them. I'm usually just kind of suspending them and positioning the pole in front of me like so, and really the downward force is my hand into the strap like you see here. So one quirk about these poles is they're not mirror images of each other. They're identical. They're exactly the same as far as the wrist strap goes. So there's no right or left side. Okay, so let me explain how that works. So when you put my left hand up through either one of these poles, okay, there's the logo on the strap, and I place my hand and my thumb up through the bottom properly like I showed you, and I obtain the proper grip with my left hand. Okay, now the scenario is not the same with my right hand. Okay, so if I grab the other pole with my right hand, position my wrist up through the bottom like you see, okay, now it looks the same, right? But it's actually not, because the webbing is reversed. So on my right hand, I'm taking the thin part of the webbing and putting that around my thumb, and the thick padded part of the strap is down on the heel of my hand, like hopefully you can see right there. So the heel of my right hand is planted into the foam in the thicker padding area, the felt, I guess, in the thicker padding area on the wrist strap, and my thumb is pressing into the thinner webbing. I'm not sure why they did that. Okay, you would think they would just make them the same. I mean, just put padding and keep the same webbing material, throughout the entire length of the strap. Or flip it around and make them a mirror image of each other, so you've got a right hand and a left hand side. I'm not sure if all poles are like this or not, or if this is just a quirk with these Cascade Mountain Tech poles. It doesn't really bother me, honestly. My hands are, I guess, robust enough to handle it either way, whichever way. So I guess, you know, for a while, I was actually taking, on the right hand side, I was taking my right hand and twisting the strap to get my thumb and get the fat padded part of the strap to wrap around my thumb like this. And that works too, but you kind of twist up the nylon webbing a little bit, and it gets kind of bunched up, and it's a little bit awkward that way. I find it more comfortable just simply to pass my wrist up through here and then have my thumb braced on the thinner, non-padded portion of the strap. So the other thing about these is you want to pay attention to your tips and the business end of the pole. So this is my pole. Oops, let me get into focus here. This is my pole in the condition that we're in after 5 or 6 hikes. So I've found other people's baskets loose on the ground and on the trails before. So these can come loose. So you want to make sure your baskets are nice and tight and snug. Okay, and your tips as well are actually replaceable, the carbide tip. So I've been meaning to go out and just get a backup set from REI or someplace like that. So the tips can be replaced, and likewise they can actually fall out if you're not careful. So it's a good idea to pay attention to these periodically. So the other pole, I jabbed it in behind a rock, and I got kind of a cut score into the plastic there. So it hasn't broken or done anything severe, but I'm keeping my eye out on that. That could propagate and spread into a crack of some sort. So again, at $30, I'm not really going to complain about it too much. I'm not sure exactly how much of this tip is replaceable. So I know they're like uniform fit and kind of generic fit for some of these things. So I probably should look into maybe a replacement part just for that. I don't want that to be breaking, or I don't want that to propagate out into a crack. Each one of these weighs 8 ounces. So you're adding a pound to your loadout. And while that sounds like a lot and adds up to a lot on paper, from my findings, it's weight that is justified. It's good weight. Does that make any sense? If that makes any sense. So what I mean by that is, every ounce of thrust that I put into these, when I'm really bearing down on them and really pounding them into the ground, every ounce of thrust I put into these things is weight that's lifted up off of somewhere on my body. Okay, so yeah, it's 8 ounces, but it's weight that is counter set and offset with proper technique. So what that means is you're alleviating the rest of that load, the pounding and the load off your knees, your joints, your heels, your ankles. And at the end of a long hike, it really does add up. And I find it overall, it really does benefit me. So I think the other myth and fallacy that I had was my belief that trekking poles are like a form of cheating. Okay, I'm cheating my body. I'm cheating the rest of my body. I'm taking a shortcut, so to speak. And that's absolutely not true at all. If you're trekking up a long hill or a long hike to get to someplace, you're going to be just as winded and just as huffing and puffing with poles or without poles. The difference is your feet and your toes won't be so fatigued. Okay, you're basically giving your body, your heart, and your lungs the same workout, but you're spreading the workout across different muscle groups in your body. Think of it that way. Thanks a lot, guys, for sitting through me on this review. Hope you guys find it useful. And I think you can find these poles on like Amazon for like $40 or so. Not quite as cheap as I got them for at Costco, but still in the $30-$40 range. Hey, this is a great way for me to experiment. It's been a great way for me to experiment and introduce myself to trekking poles. and I would totally recommend it for anybody else as well if you want to give it a try and give it a shot. So thanks guys for tuning in, and remember everybody, excuse me, stay allergic out there and stay safe and enjoy the outdoors.